Okay, great. I think we can now go ahead and get started. So please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available as a resource on our website. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mavish and I am the Solar Projects Coordinator with the Philadelphia Energy Authority. And on behalf of PEA and all our speakers, I welcome you to tonight's webinar. Also on the call from PEA are Laura Ridgell and Morgan King. So Laura is our Director of Development Policy and Workforce Initiatives, and Morgan King is our Solarize Philly intern. So Morgan and Laura, do you want to say hi to everyone real quick?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for getting on. It's great to have such a strong showing of the Solarize Philly community and a lot of familiar names. So thanks for being here, and thanks, Mavish, for pulling this together.
Of course. Thank you, Laura.
I also want to second a thank you to Mavish and also Solar States and Ron Celentano for joining us today. And I'm so glad you were all able to make it.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you for all your help to organize this webinar. So before I introduce our speakers for tonight, I want to go ahead and share a very quick overview of PEA and also a quick update on Solarize Philly for members of the public who are not familiar with the program. So those of you who don't know us already, Philadelphia Energy Authority is an independent municipal agency that was created in 2010 with the goal of promoting energy affordability and sustainability in the city. And in 2016, we launched our main flagship campaign, known as Philadelphia Energy Campaign, with the goal of creating 10,000 clean energy jobs by 2026. So we're working towards achieving our goal by developing and supporting projects and programs on four main sectors, namely municipal buildings, schools, residential units, and small businesses. And as you can see on the next slide, we are developing programs that use energy as a tool to drive economic development, to create jobs, and at the same time to improve the public health. So under the overarching umbrella of Philadelphia Energy Campaign, we launched Solarize Philly in 2017, which is a citywide initiative to help all Philadelphians go solar. And I'm really excited to share that since the launch of the program in 2017, Solarize Philly has evolved to become the single largest Solarize initiative in the whole country. So to date, from all across Philadelphia, close to 6,500 property owners signed up to get an initial assessment done for their property. And from that pool of people, 750 homeowners signed a contract to move forward in the process, injecting more than $12 million into Philly's clean energy economy and creating 98 jobs. So I know that most of the participants on this call are homeowners who went solar through Solarize Philly. So I want to thank you all for stepping up as a leader in Philly's transition to clean energy, and you have inspired so many others to follow your lead. So on that note, I will introduce our speakers for the night. So we are joined by Solar States and Celentano Energy Services. So Ron Celentano from Celentano Energy Services will be talking about the SREC management, and he will also be answering your questions on the topic. Ron has an experience of more than 40 years in the area of solar energy, with 25 years focused on solar PV. In addition to his technical expertise, he has also been deeply involved in policy work and played an instrumental role in shaping most of Pennsylvania's state laws and regulations, including net metering, interconnection, solar share requirement, closing the borders, and many other policy-related initiatives. Ron is also currently the president of Pennsylvania Solar and Storage Industries Association, and he also serves as the vice president of Mid-Atlantic Solar and Storage Industries Association for Pennsylvania. Our second speaker for the night is Neve McGroin, who is the solar operator and design technician with Solar States. Neve is originally from Rye, New York, and she moved to Philadelphia in 2019. Which is when she also joined the Solar Energy Technical Training Program hosted by Philadelphia OIC. After graduating from the solar training program, she was offered a role at Solar States, and Neve currently spearheads initiatives to support hundreds of customers with solar PV design, monitoring, and service needs. So Neve and Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited and looking forward to an engaging conversation. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Mark, Athena, and Mike from Solar States, who are also on the call with us today. Before I pass it on to Ron, I just wanted to mention that we have set aside 15 minutes towards the end of the webinar for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to start typing your questions in the chat box. And with that, I would invite Ron to share his updates on the SREC management. Thank you, Ron. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm on. Hello, everyone, and it's great to see. Almost approaching 100 participants. That's phenomenal. That's great. Thank you for having me speak on this behalf of this part of the solar market. I'm also, by the way, been active with the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association since like 1980. That's a local nonprofit group too that it's very exciting to be part of. Yeah, we're going to go. I have a lot to talk about. Hopefully I'll get it done in enough time. Why don't we just jump to the next slide quick? I always like to show this slide real quick. This is from Dr. Richard Perez, who talk about legends. He's a really super legend for decades, many decades in the solar industry. And this is to give a perspective of the amount of solar radiation, being able to provide us for the energy that we need. On the right side are the circles that represent the finite resources of the fossil fuels and for nuclear energy. And then the inner side, of course, you see the big circle for solar, but on the inside there are the renewables, and you can see the sizes of those. Now, they're basically the amount of energy that can be generated so I think it's terawatts. Yeah, terawatts in a year. And the two on the far left, the two circles on the far left side are the consumption of the world in regard to energy. So you can see how how much solar can provide all that we need, and how the finite resources are going to disappear. And the other renewables don't quite, some of them closely make it, but solar is really pretty much the answer going forward. Okay, next. So real quick overview. I'm going to be covering some technical stuff, but this is, I want to give a little bit of perspective on the state and regulatory developments of renewables that happened in Pennsylvania. It started with net metering in the late 1990s. PECO was the first utility to adopt net metering of some sort. And so that, and ever since 2004 and 2007, it had been upgraded to be statewide, because all the other utilities also then adopted it as well. Interconnection was another part that happened at that very time. Of course, whenever you interconnect your solar system into the grid, you're now paralleling with the grid services, and they're then required to have interconnection application process through the utilities in order to safely connect and generate power. Alternative energy portfolio standard. This was I guess analogous to, well, very much similar to what other states have, what they call renewable energy portfolio standards. And this is basically the construct of this. This was a mechanism developed many years ago in different states, where we're trying to introduce and mandate renewable energy resources into the mix of conventional power generation. And it required, generally they were structured to require a certain percentage of that being produced by conventional generation had to be coming from renewables. And that was maybe done by selling the attributes from those types of renewable resources. Ours is a little different because we have such a conservative legislature. We had to also include non-renewable resources, which that's why we came up with the alternative energy part of the name of our legislation here. So we have tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1, 8% renewable, and you can see the breakdown of all the different renewable resources. And within that, there's 0.5% of solar that has to come from solar photovoltaics, leaving the remaining 7.5% from the other renewables. And then there's tier 2, 10% alternative technologies, and that would include things like, municipal solid waste, energy efficiency is actually in there, and there's a lot of other waste coal things. And we also have large hydro that's in there too. So we're going to just focus on the 0.5% of solar. And by the way, these percentages are really coming to their plateauing May 31st of this year. Okay, next slide, please. Now, these are the mechanisms that I like to throw out there that are economic drivers for expanding solar. And usually there are 3, sometimes 4, depending if there's some kind of grant program that might be in place. We don't have a grant, any kind of grant in Pennsylvania anymore, unlike we had several years ago. But what we do have is what you've benefited by is the Solarize campaign. So you have a federal tax credit, which right now gives 26% off the cost of the total installation of the project. You have net metering. I talked about that before, and I'll go into that a little bit more, but it's basically a mechanism to reduce your electric bill. And it's equivalent to the full retail value for distribution, generation, and transmission. There are 3 parts of your electric bill, and they're bundled together, but as long as you stay with your default supplier, which in this case is PECO. It's really important I hope that you all are with PECO, because if you are generating more than you need and you generate a monthly surplus, that third-party supplier, such as maybe, Green Mountain Energy or whatever, they won't see that extra export that you've spilled over into your next month, and you won't get credit for it. So it's important that you stay with PECO. Solar renewable energy credits is now the other piece of this. That's what we'll be talking more about. It is a revenue stream that helps with the cost of investing in solar. And then there's the Solarize campaign, which you of course know about. So this helps with group buying power. It reduces the upfront costs a little bit. So these are 4 important things for solar to be, making it more economically attractive. Okay, next slide. Net metering is sort of the obvious thing where you're offsetting your bill, and what happens is at the end of the year, if you generate a surplus, you get the price to compare, which is the term that's equivalent to the generation price. It's about, for residential, maybe a little over 6 cents, 6.3 cents or so per kWh. Okay, next slide. What the heck is a REC? We've been using this slide for 20 years now. It's always still very worthwhile. When you generate solar on your roof, off your rooftop, you generate 2 things. You generate the electrons that offset your electric bill. Basically, you offset your loads using that system. The electrons will offset your electric bill, slowing down what's coming down off the grid to meet that load. But simultaneously, you generate these attributes, these green tags, that are really a commodity that can create revenue in certain cases, or at least count as a credit for offsetting carbon. The point is that these attributes are all about equivalent in some way to offset the emissions from conventional power generation. So this is what we're really talking about, these attributes. And one solar renewable energy credit, or we term it as an SREC, is worth 1,000 kWh of solar. I'm gonna throw it out guessing that maybe the average, I don't know, a 4 kW system is what many of you may have. Could be 3, could be 5, whatever, but let's just say 4 kW. So maybe you're generating about 5,000 kWh a year. That would be 5 SRECs, just to give you a sense of what that means. Okay, next slide. So the big picture of how this is all working is the solar owner would sign up with an SREC aggregator. SREC aggregator is like, for you to go try to sell your solar on the street, good luck. So you want to kind of join up with an aggregator in most cases. They have lots of customers, and they're buying a lot of groups of SRECs from a lot of system owners, and they bundle them together, and they in fact then sell them to the utilities. What they, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but they're the ones who register your solar PV system into the Alternative Energy Portfolio System program, and then that goes into registering into the Generation Attributes Tracking System, or GATS. You cannot sell your solar, you can't sell your SRECs into the Pennsylvania market until your system is certified. And this is the process you have to go through. You can do this yourself, but it's far easier to have an SREC aggregator do it for you. The solar owner, and after being with the aggregator, or you could do it yourself, you basically report your monthly gross solar generation. And I want to emphasize it's the gross, it's not your net or anything to do with how much it's offsetting your electric bill. It's your gross production. And the aggregator, it's very easy. Again, you go on their website, you just drop the number in, and then you're done. That's all you have to do. And then you receive payment for the amount of SRECs that are sold. Many times they sell that, they'll send you a check relative to the the amount of SRECs that you may have generated. So like, you know, instead of getting a monthly check, or you might get quarterly, it might come out throughout the different part of the year, depending on how many SRECs you sell. The SREC aggregator sells the bundles of the SRECs to either utilities or to, you know, such as PICO, or to the third-party suppliers, such as like a Green Mountain Energy. So they're the ones that are required to purchase the SRECs. That's what the law is all about. And it's based on the percentage of sales of generation that they provide to Pennsylvanians across the state. And the third-party suppliers, you know, when that's choosing another supplier, they also have to pay for these SRECs as well. And then ultimately, the utilities are reimbursed for all the SREC purchases that they've made, that they bought from you, and they're paid back by all the ratepayers. All the ratepayers pay a little bit, their bills go up a little bit more, and they ultimately pay the utilities back. So it's a pass-through for them. Whereas the third-party suppliers, they aren't compensated that way. They have to actually either take the loss, or they increase their rates to their customers a little bit to offset that cost. Next slide. So this is I talked about percentages, and we have 15 years when the AEPS began. Really started in 2004, but didn't implement until 2006, 2007. And as I also said, you'll see at the bottom that it's going to be ending May 31st, 2021. What I mean by ending, it really is going to flatline. It's not going to stop. So it's a curve going up, and then it flatlines. So in the center here, you see solar PV, and these are the percentages by which a utility or a generator had to purchase. So like at the end, 0.5%. So PICO, for example, 0.5% of all their sales of electricity to all their customers, and this is really to their default supply customers only. They would have to then back calculate how much SRECs, and remember, one SREC is 1 kWh. That's how much they'd have to buy, and they typically may go to an aggregator to do that, or they might go to large solar generators or whatever, but they would purchase those, and that's pretty much how that would work. Go ahead. Oh, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. So one of the problems with our particular AEPS law, unlike others, is we had what was called open borders. And let's say, for example, New Jersey, when they had their RPS and their solar, requirement in their law, they basically said you have to be, that system has to be in the boundary of New Jersey in order to sell your credits into our program. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania, being as conservative as they are, our legislators are very conservative. They were very concerned about interstate commerce clause laws or issues or violations. So they decided to keep it all open borders throughout what's called the PJM territory. That's the regional transmission organization, RTO. So that meant that someone in North Carolina could basically put in a system over there and sell those credits into Pennsylvania. Of course, that wasn't a big issue in the earlier days, but it became a real serious problem towards the later years. And it became a problem because there were very large systems that were going in North Carolina in particular, but a lot of different states. The labor rates are much lower, and they were selling the credits into Pennsylvania, and we ratepayers were paying for those jobs down there, and we were not getting the emission benefits from that either. So it was really a real loser situation for us. Next slide. And this kind of demonstrates, looking at 2014, 2015, 16, and 17, how it was changing. Now the big, when you look at 14, you see that the biggest part of that pie was Pennsylvania at 85%. That meant 85% of all the credits that had to be sold to utilities and generation, third-party generators, 85% came from projects inside the state. But as you move to 2015, 16, and 17, Pennsylvania became a smaller and smaller piece of that pie, and more of those generating systems were coming from out of state. So it was becoming a real serious problem. Next slide. And this is the current price of right now of the SREC. It's about $28, I think. It's actually starting to nudge up a little bit. This is from a slide called SREC Trade, It's probably the most often looked at website to see what is the status of the SREC price. And it shows typically a year. This is a reason. So the reason that our prices are so low, and you could look at the next slide too, as compared to Jersey, which is obviously 10 times higher, it's because of that closed border issue. Now we did get a law passed about over 2 years ago to close the borders. It's been taking a long time for that to really have an effect. Next slide. Oh, yeah, I must have missed something. I think a slide got missed. Oh, I'll back up for 1 minute. Yeah, okay, thanks. So it's really a supply and demand thing. There was so much supply of solar from out of state that just drove the price down. And the price in Pennsylvania was as high as $350. Maybe it was back in 2010, I think, but it quickly plummeted as we had large chunks of projects. Like when we had our Sunshine program back in around 2012 to 14, that brought a lot of solar in, and that really crashed the market. So we're hoping to see if we can pick up that market again very soon. I'll show that in the very end of this presentation. Okay, next slide. Now, if you're interested, signing on with an SREC aggregator, this is a list from the PA AEPS administrator's website. I have the link there, and these are the list of aggregators that are out there. The one I always put, say a word for Norwood Energy. I like them a lot. They're very honest. They've actually helped us many times on policy issues. So I always like to put them up front, but they all pretty much give you about the same price. I mean, I just heard someone calling up. They wanted to leave their aggregator because they didn't like the price. They wanted to go to someone else. They're all going to give you about the same amount because it's all about the market. So it's not like anyone's going to give you a much better deal. It's more about maybe what their fees might be and things like that. So the other thing I want to point out that well, let me go to the next slide. I'll get to this point in a minute. So this is typically the kind of information you would need. So if you called up the SREC aggregator, they're going to want pretty much this information because this is what's needed for the AEPS to certify the system as well as for GATS to register the system. Often, I mean, you may not know some of these details, so you may want to have your installer provide this information for you. It's basically the size of the system, where it's mounted, the PV module and inverter manufacturer and the model number and the rating, the number of modules and number of inverters. You have a microinverters, you're going to have as many inverters as modules possibly, depending on what kind of configuration you have. And then the orientation, that may be the thing that you don't maybe necessarily know. So your installer will have all this information. But what's going to be important too is they need to see a picture of the installed module. They want to count the modules. So if things are delayed long enough, you might be able to get a Google aerial shot of that. But more likely, hopefully, and now your installer may have a drone and they can fly up there and you would ask them to take a photograph of that array. And then that is what you could send in and they can count the modules and verify that's what you have. And then you need a copy or a picture of your utility grade meter. Now, I don't know what is going with how some of the installers, what they're doing these days. I'm really old school. I always like to put in a conventional solar generation meter. It looks just like your utility meter, and that just shows gross solar generation. Even though you might have a monitoring system that might be utility grade, I feel it's very important to have redundancy in this, because I've seen over the years I've been doing this, I've seen failures on both sides. Either the inverter's got to be replaced and you're losing, hey, I don't know what's going on with with the generation part of it. You don't know, like that data was lost perhaps, or the meter could even go down either. So it's good to have redundancy to verify and back up some missing holes that you may have of data. And then you need a copy of the signed interconnection agreement. The interconnection agreement comes into two parts, a part one and a part two. The part two is the completion form. And this is where, again, where your installer should be able to provide this copy of that document for you to submit to the aggregator. Okay, go ahead. So just some follow-up stuff here. I mean, I'm saying here that, how's my time? Am my time okay? Go on,
Yeah.
rip through. Okay, so the aggregator will they're the ones that are going to get your system certified, and it might take a few weeks to do that. They say they'll try to get it done in 30 days, and then automatically goes into GATS being able to register the system, so that you can then record your solar the SRECs that you've recorded. Now, if you happen to have a system and it's been there for a while and you haven't registered yet, and now you're like, oh, I better get going on this. Unfortunately, you can't count those SRECs that you would have generated up until the point that you sign up with an aggregator. Unfortunately, it has to all start from the point at which you have signed up with an aggregator. Now, once you do sign up or talk to an aggregator and you show them a picture of your solar meter or give evidence of your generation at that time, while it's being processed for certification, they'll count it from that point going forward. They typically don't charge for doing all this setup for you, so that's actually a good thing, and that's what you could be checking for to make sure. Like, I know Norwood doesn't charge for that. They may charge some small fee, with maybe a flat fee or a percentage of the amount that you would get for selling the SRECs, or it also may be based on some minimum fee. It's a very small fee, generally speaking, so you could do that kind of comparison. In PA, the SRECs, they last for about 3 years, just short of 3 years. So that means you can actually generate your solar, throw it into GATS, and GATS is basically GATS tends to be an accounting structure. So there's no double counting going on. It keeps track of all the solar that's being generated as well as what's being sold back out to the utility. So it keeps track of all of that stuff. And so you can basically keep your SRECs in there for almost up to 3 years before it's sold and retired by a utility or a third-party generator. But after that 3-year period, if you haven't sold it, then they lose all their value for selling into the marketplace. So just to keep that in mind. And right now in Pennsylvania, there is it's indefinite how long your solar system can generate SRECs into the marketplace. Like in New Jersey right now, I think I can't remember, it's 10 or 15 years, but they've always had a 15-year limit. So after 15 years, you couldn't sell your SRECs into the New Jersey marketplace anymore. We are doing some current legislation to expand the AEPS right now, and we're looking at having a 15-year life on that. So kind of implementing this. If you plan to sell your home after you have a system you've already been registered and having a certified system, you have to definitely get in touch with the AEPS administrator, because if you just leave and sell their house and the new homeowners there and they want to now try to sell those credits, it's going to be challenging. It can be done, but it's really challenging. They're supposed to be staying, of course, at the home. At the place wherever the solar system is, but there has to be a handoff, and there needs to be some written document that the administrator can help you work out with the new homeowner in order for that to transfer properly. Finally, this is kind of a crazy thing here, but it's always a challenge to discuss about it. When you sell your SRECs, you're basically stripping off the solar attribute off of the electricity that you generated. So just keep in mind, it's not quite right to say, hey, I'm powering my house with solar energy, when in fact you sold those credits, because you can't really double count that stuff. You've already sold it for cash. So you're just left with the electricity that you are meeting your electric needs with, but it's not really solar energy. So some people really want to take more of that benefit and say, hey, I am really offsetting carbon emissions on my property, and I'm not going to sell those credits. So that's just something to keep in mind. And let me see, next. Yep, next slide. Okay, and this is the last slide, I think. Yeah, so we have a bill. I've been working on it for a very long time, that we are trying to expand our AEPS Tier 1 only and the solar requirements, because as I said, they are flatlining on the 31st of this year. And we are way behind all the other neighboring states. It's really terrible where we stand at. So you can look in this table here, and we're about, when you see 2021, that's that 0.5% I was telling you about. And then the next 5 years going out to 2026 is how much we would want to increase, which is quite it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think we can definitely do it. And we have a co-sponsor memo that is out now that Senator Laughlin and Haywood just put out. So in about a couple of weeks, we expect that bill to be introduced. So that is about it. That should help increase the price for the SREC. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much for sharing those really interesting updates and insights. I have a couple of questions for you, and I know we will be taking most of these questions during the Q&A session, but two really quick questions while we're still on the topic.
Yep.
The first one is from Allison, and Allison says, I had my solar panels installed several years ago, but never done anything with the SRECs. How do I get started? Is it too late now?
No, it's not too late. You can do exactly what I said. You can contact an aggregator, and Norwood was the one I suggested, but you can look at that list and you can contact them and say, hey, I have just tell them that if you have your system. Now you will need, if your solar installer is still around, and I kind of hope they are, you will need a few documents that you need. Like you would need that interconnection, that part 2 of the interconnection application form. I'm doing this right now myself. I'm working on a project, a commercial project. Same thing happened. And I'm going through that challenge of getting it. You need some of that paperwork and documentation in order to get it legitimized so you can get it certified. But contact one of the aggregators and they should help you through that. And then what will happen is your SRECs will start from like today going forward. You won't be able to get, you can't, get the credits from that, what you've already generated.
Got it. And the second question related to that is, can the customers contact the aggregators directly?
Yeah.
Or do they, okay, so they just need the information from the installers, but once they have the information, they can get in touch with the aggregator directly.
Yeah, like that table I showed you, they had names,
Okay.
they phone numbers, everything's there.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Ron. I think that was
Sure.
really helpful and I learned a lot. So thank you again for those really interesting insights. And with that, I'd like to invite Neve from Solar States to talk about monitoring solar systems using Enphase and SolarEdge.
Okay, hello. Morgan? Okay, cool. Yeah, so my name is Neve. I've done various things at Solar States, but part of it is looking at the monitoring. And I just want to say, I don't know how many of you have either Enphase or SolarEdge already, but by simply being at this webinar and, keeping an eye on your system, it really helps us make sure that everything goes accordingly. And it's pretty fun, honestly, looking at all the data and stuff. So super important first step. The graphs of SolarEdge and Enphase, basically they show the same thing, but differently. Solar production usually looks like a daily bell curve based on the rising and setting of the sun, and then the Earth's tilt on the axis. So we'll see a nice bell curve throughout all the different productions. This is what the Enphase customer view of a daily looks like. You can see that the blue is the solar production with that bell curve that I mentioned, and then the orange is consumption monitoring, which we offer at Solar States, which is like the home electrical use, fairly consistent except for some, electrical spikes of like larger appliances. Next. I just wanted to go through all. So this is the week, pretty consistent. And then monthly, this is the month of February. And I wanted to bring up this month in particular because we had a lot of snow as compared to last February. So you can see that snow in particular covers panels and affects production. So if you look at the next slide for February 2020, we didn't get as much snow, so the production looks different. So no need to worry about that if you're keeping a close eye on your production. There are like regular fluctuations, and that's cool. Next. Okay, now we're on to SolarEdge. This is the same sort of bell curve, just line graph. That's the ideal sort of daily graph, 4 kilowatt-ish system, like Ron said. Next. A weekly, you've got the daily bell curves. You can see there's regular sort of differences per day, but they look kind of similar. Next. This would be February of this year. Again, there's like snow, which really affected covered up some panels and affected production, as opposed to February of last year, which is next slide, or sorry, I think this is July. But yeah, so there are like seasonal differences in month to month, and that's cool, which you can see through your production monitoring. Next. And then here's the whole year. You've got a beautiful bell curve full fleshed out for 2020, and then starting to fill out for 2021. Next. Okay, so like I mentioned, yeah, just I was asked to cover like snow and its impact on production, because a lot of customers were like concerned about this. Generally, like our sales team uses like historical weather data to account for the differences in production, so that, you know, even if you lose a couple of days, you'll still be hitting your goal. I believe we have some kind of guarantee within a couple of percentage points that we will hit the production goal. And then we had a customer compile some data in an Excel sheet showing from year to year the different days that they lost production. But yeah, if it's snow, no need to contact us. You can generally just brush it off or wait for it to melt. Next slide. That's the production. You can see that the 2019 and the 2020 dates missed correlate. So we think it's based on weather. Okay. Yeah, so more February data from 2021. This is end phase. It's February 2020 end phase. And then this is, yeah, SolarEdge February 2021 and SolarEdge February 2020 last year. Next. Okay, and here we're on to a cool part of the monitoring. It's awesome if you just like know your login information and you can go to the monitoring website directly. But if you want something more hands-off and automatic that will just update you month to month, you can see that I've screenshotted, and you can go up to that toolbar in the upper right corner and click on it. And then you can set up email alerts for monthly. I think setting up monthly sort of updates is better because there can be just sort of regular daily fluctuations, but that can be a great way to make sure that everything is going as planned. Next. Okay, and then this customer actually set up a special end phase production alert. So he set it up so that if his system fell below like 90% of what was estimated, he would get a system error, even though everything was like working as planned, just alerting him that his system production was like slightly low. So you can like click through that. So that's clicking through the website, seeing that there's a system production error, and then yeah, producing slightly less energy. Keep going, but you can see from this is the admin side. You can see that everything is looking fine. So it's just slightly low. That's all good. All right, next. Yeah, you can contact SolarStates if you want that, like as part of your monitoring package that we offer. We can set up those special production alerts, which are we always get just like alerts if something else besides just slightly low production happens. But yes, you can always feel free to contact us for that. Next. Okay, this is explaining what a production threshold is, just saying that it's relatively low in comparison to the estimated production. Next. And this is, I guess, how we would do it for you if you asked us. Next. Next. That was the admin version of the web page, and then this is what the customer sees. So this micro inverter error is like slightly more important to like just monitoring and managing a system that's been set up, but there's no need to panic over a single day's data. But it will show us a system error if the microinverter, which is on the back of the module for Enphase systems, which takes the solar irradiance and turns it into AC power for us if that isn't communicating with the monitoring portal. So we can go to next. I just wanted to show exactly for homeowners, like exactly what you can click through and like see. So you can go to where's the problem, next one, and it'll show you exactly which panels are affected. Sometimes, this is just due to like shading or maybe something fell onto the panel. So feel free to reach out if that happens, but yeah. Okay, next. And then there are lots of, Enphase is a really great company, and they have a lot of troubleshooting like resources that homeowners and system owners can access, as well as installers. So if you want to dig a little further, you can go to their website. And next. Just go to like these support sort of things. Next. Oftentimes they'll ask you just so they can see exactly which system they need to troubleshoot. They'll ask for your name, and then the only tricky thing might be the site ID to find. So next, the site ID would be at the bottom, the little number next to a name that I crossed out at the status, like homepage of your monitoring system. Next. Okay, so the Envoy not reporting would be slightly more concerning, because the Envoy is the like brain of the Enphase system and what connects to the internet. So, I think that is a time when you can definitely reach out to SolarStates to troubleshoot that for you. Next. And that's what that looks like. You can see that they're not really sure what's going on with the microinverters because they can't communicate because the Envoy's out. Next. You can contact support. Next. Or SolarStates. Next. Okay, so this is the SolarEdge login page. Next. And this is the top of the homepage, what you'll see. Generally, homeowners will have dashboard and layout and alerts, but not the other sort of tabs that are reserved for installers. Next, but you can click, and if you have an alert, you can click on the alert and you'll see in the mid right, it'll tell you there's in this case, an inverter production issue, which is more important. The inverter for SolarEdge systems is also like the brain, the communication center of the system. So if anything happens with that, definitely feel free to contact us.
So Neve, quick question while we're still on this slide. So one of the participants is asking, so if anything happens with the system, alerts is where you have to go to figure out if the inverter is down or if one of the modules is down.
Yes.
Okay, so the message would show up exactly here where we see the alerts icon.
Yes.
And there's one notification. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And this is why it's important to check in and make sure that everything is connected to the internet so that you can, like, if an alert comes up, it's noticed quickly and it's, you know, you can fix it as soon as possible. Okay, next. Okay, so here's an optimizer alert. It's kind of like, this is what is on the back of a panel for solar edge systems. Slightly less concerning, similar to the microinverters. It could be shading and there's no need to worry about a single day's worth of data. But if it consistently reoccurs, then it's good to reach out to Solar States. And this is where you can see in the layout exactly where the optimizer that's having difficulty is located on your rooftop. So you can see that this is exactly how the panels are laid out, and you can, you know, hypothesize whether it could be a chimney or some other sort of thing, or you know, maybe even send up a drone, as Ron mentioned, and see what's going on up there. Next. Okay, and then Solar Edge also has, you know, some pretty good resources for homeowners. I think the point of this sort of webinar is to say that, of course, you can also always contact Solar States, but there are things that involved homeowners can see and figure out that, you know, helps them and helps us and saves time and is able to diagnose everything quicker. So you can go to the, you know, click on this like homeowner, and then they've got an FAQ on the next slide with some common questions. And yeah, then this is our, you know, contact page, our phone number, our email, and then just a direct messaging portal that will be sent over to our service team. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? I'm sure I sped through that way too quickly, but.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Steve. That was really helpful. We do have a couple of questions, and I think, you know, we can like dive right in and start the Q&A session. So the first question I have is actually for you, Neve, and the question is, what if your system is not producing and you do not see any alert notifications? So I know you mentioned that if it's snowing or if it's a rainy day, your system wouldn't produce, but are there any factors which would lead to the system not producing and nothing showing up on the alert notifications?
I mean, you should be able to see in the layout tab, the different, it'll be a darker blue, but it's producing more solar energy. And so you will be able to see whether or not it is producing. You might not necessarily get an alert if it's not below a certain threshold, but you will be able to tell the degree to which it is producing or not, and you can sort of think to yourself whether it could be weather related or whether it could be something more serious. Generally, if it is anything serious, there would be like a component with an alert associated with it.
Got it.
But feel free to reach out to Solar States.
Got it. The second question is, does Solar Edge have the same information as Enphase? And is this typically something that the installer decides on behalf of the customer?
So I think that, I mean, you see different production values, and the installer, we do decide on Solar Edge whether you see a dashboard and layout or just a dashboard. We generally give dashboard and layout, but similar alerts. I think Enphase is a little more Enphase, I think, has better like customer support, and you're better able to like contact them and troubleshoot, but their alerts are not always as detailed. SolarEdge is a little more old school. Yeah.
So what if someone wants to switch from SolarEdge to Enphase or vice versa? Can they do it at this point?
They're different. I don't think so. You'd have to basically get a different inverter, and pieces on every single module would be different. So it'd be not the best move, I don't think.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. So the next question I have here is for Ron. And Ron, the question is, I signed up via installer for SolarEdge to log monthly and then transfer info into GATS system. I began logging SRECs shortly after my system around September 2018. Do I still have to sign up with an aggregator, or can I do that through the GATS system?
Okay, so yeah, it's a lot of questions kind of related to this. That means you have I'm sure if you probably went through, I guess you also signed up through the APS program administrator as well, because you almost would have to, because you need a certification number that you get for Pennsylvania that gets carried over to GATS, and then you have a GATS number. So you should have these numbers. You should be able to go into the GATS and you should see your line item as your system has been, defined, and the size of it. You just need to, well, in order to sell the credits, unless you know who will buy those credits. I mean, the aggregator is by far the best way to sell those, or to pass those credits over to them. If they've been accumulating in GATS, that's good. If it's all, if you've done it the right way, they should be able to pick up at least almost the 3 years worth, going back almost 3 years. As long as they've been, registered, they've been reported into GATS, they should all still be valid for sale. But the aggregator is the one who would be selling them. You certainly can try, but it's challenging. I think you could do this a little bit more easily through SREC trade, but still, you need someone to do the purchase. You're not going to be knocking on Pico's door with a bag of SRECs and saying, "Hey, man, what do you buy for these?" That's not going to really work.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Another question for you, Ron. Is there a best month or time of year to sell SRECs for the highest value?
No. No. I mean, basically, you sell them throughout the year. You report them monthly, typically, and you could even delay. You may not be able to. You may not even have to. Even when you do it to GATS, you could like hold off as much as many months, and then dump them in at one time. And they'll break them out by month relative to, sort of a PV watts type of, percentages, if you will, by month. But no, it doesn't make sense, because it's all about the market. It has nothing really to do. I mean, obviously you're going to be generating more solar in the summertime. So that'll have some factor, but it's more about the pricing, and it's just so low to begin with. It's really insignificant.
Got it. And on a similar note, this question is from Grant Johnson. And the question is, RPA SRECs projected to increase in value now that the second old closed border legislation was passed?
That was the theory. I think one of the big problems with when we closed the borders, there were so many projects out of state, and I even looked at. I'm waiting for the new report to come out of the PUC from the previous year and what the status is with everything going on with all of this. But there's so much projects that were certified out of state that when the law was passed, all those projects were recertified back to Tier 1. They could sell their credits into the Tier 1, not the solar, but they had a petition to the PUC because we did have a clause in there that if they had an existing contract that was going to terminate sometime in the future, we would have to honor that, or it would be honored. And they had a petition to the utility to demonstrate that in fact was, their contract in fact was still live, if you will. And many of them had done that or had enough time to game it so they could do that. So there's a lot of backlog of solar that we were not sure how much there was of. And I think that's what's been keeping the price down far longer than we thought. I think the slight jump that I was showing you in the graph, the little tiny jump up a little bit, was probably because of that memorandum that went out a couple of weeks ago. So there's it stimulates the market, you know, it's like almost like social media stuff. And that's what seemed to have maybe triggered the market to increase the price a little bit. We'll see.
Got it. That's really interesting. So another follow-up comment from Grant, and I'm sure this would be helpful for other participants as well. So Grant says, so GATS is strictly the bank, but an aggregator is your broker to sell what you accumulate in GATS. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a very good analogies. That's a good description of the two, how they differentiate from each other. Yes, the GATS is really the accounting system, if you will, keeping track of what's being reported in as generation and what's being sold out to the utilities and generation suppliers.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. So the next question I have here is for Neve. Neve, this question is from Carl, and the question is that I know you mentioned that the installers have a more detailed admin view, but is there a way that the customers can also get access to that admin view or get more information, the same level that is being shared with installers?
I think the worry is that you can do lots of different updates and repairings and different updates like through the website once you have that admin power. So I think Solar's Edge would not be happy with us if we gave all customers that the power to do all that stuff. I think it might cause more harm than good. But you have all the same data as us. You just don't have some of the component stuff, and you can always access the Solar Edge or Enphase customer support, and they will tell you anything. You just cannot do it directly.
Got it. Thank you. And this next question, Neve, is from Eric, who is a SolarStates customer and got installed back in October 2020. And the question is, I have been receiving a monthly energy production report email from Enphase since January, but I don't believe I have any way to connect to my dashboard and see all the monitoring details. I've searched my inbox and don't have anything I can find about signing up for that. Do I just go to their website to sign up? Like, could you talk more about the sign up process?
I think if you contact SolarStates and give us your name, we should be able to find you if we on our monitoring portal and give you access and information. Sorry that happened to you.
So one other question, Neve, and I know you talked about that if the production goes below a certain threshold, it would show up on the system and you can see which module is underproducing. But at what stage should the customers contact SolarStates or some other installer? Like, what's the threshold? Is it 80% or is it 85%?
I would say if you can compare it to its sort of neighboring modules and it's consistently, like, I don't know, it's hard to say a number, but if it's consistently producing less than 20% of its neighbors, maybe give us a call and we can see what's going on. Maybe an optimizer needs to be updated or replaced, or maybe there's just shading that, we can't do too much about.
Got it. Okay. The next question is for Ron, and I think PEA can also help with this. So Ron, the participant wants to know if you can share the list of aggregators as a follow-up to this webinar. So this webinar is recorded and we will share it on our website. And maybe we can also share that list as a resource with all the participants.
Yeah, the list or even the link. I have the link up above that list, and you can just go to that list. I mean, you could just do a Google search, PA AEPS administrator, those keywords, and you will land right away on it. I think it's PA AEPS. I forget what the actual link is, but anyway, it should be an easy find, and you should be able to work through that. I did want to mention a couple more things. I want to make sure. I don't know if anyone was on here with solar PPAs. Would that be true? Power purchase agreements or solar leases, or is everyone pretty much a solar owned system?
So I don't think we offered PPAs through Solarize Philly, but I know there are some other members from the public who may have PPAs. So
Okay.
yeah.
And just generally speaking, usually it's the solar developers, the sun runs, solar cities, whatever. They usually take ownership of the SREC, so you wouldn't have an opportunity to try to register. They've already been registered, but under their name, not your name. So you usually don't have a chance to take advantage of that revenue stream. And then I saw quickly on a lot of the chat, the Q&A and chat, I guess. It seemed like, and I'm concerned. I've been concerned about this for a long time because the price has been so low for so long. People haven't really registered and maybe not even knew about it, or installers didn't bother informing or educating some of the customers about the options of selling the credits. So there may be a lot of systems that are out there that have been running, but they didn't register, didn't really know about it. And just because they have a monitoring system, they're thinking that they're registered. That's not true. The monitoring system is just on site for your showing the performance of your system, but that does not at all by any means mean that you're registered to anything, that's, with regard to selling the credits. So I think that maybe PEA's got to, maybe people may want to go back to you, and I could talk to you or Laura about how to go forward with something like that to help people get on board, because there may be some issues with how to get them registered, because you may not have all the information you need. And also, I definitely would encourage PA to help educate and inform people going forward about how to register, because that's going to solve a lot of problems get down the stream.
Definitely, Ron. Yeah. So the purpose of organizing this webinar was really to take a step towards educating and helping people. So I think if needed, we can do a follow-up session, especially if there are more questions on how to sell SRECs, and if there are more follow-up questions on SREC management. So I think that is a great suggestion, something for us to definitely keep in mind. Another question, and I believe this is more of a monitoring related question, so maybe Neve or someone else from the Solar States team. How often is maintenance of solar panels typically required, and how often is cleaning required for the panels if there's like leaves or some other stuff that builds up on the panels?
So typically, one of the great things about going solar is it's low maintenance. You typically should never have to get on your roof. The amount of rainfall that we get in Philadelphia in comparison with other places help with soiling. So there should hardly be any buildup on there. But in the event that it is, we are more than happy to come out there and help you get those tree branches off your modules.
Got it. But Mark, what you're saying, it's not something that happens typically. It's like not something they have to do on an annual basis.
No, maybe like every 5 to 7 years, unless for whatever reason you just have a lot of buildup from leaves or something like that. But with the amount of dust that would be on there, the amount of rainfall we get in Philadelphia usually covers it.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark on that for sure. In the Northeast here, we get enough rain that usually gets washed away. I mean, if you have a flat module, that might be an issue where you may want to look at that a little bit more closely, but it's really in the Southwest where there's lots of dust, lack of rain. That's where it becomes a real problem. But don't get sold on the solar washer guy knocking on your door and set you up for a contract once a month. That you're gonna get ripped off for sure.
Right, if you have even a ballasted system, because it has a fixed tilt, all of the debris should just slide off. So no worries about that.
Got it. But even for flat roofs, it's not something that the customers should worry about a lot.
Not at all.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Perfect. Ron, another question for you. And the question is, I never input numbers anywhere. Should I be doing that for selling the SRECs?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The question is, I never input numbers anywhere. Should I be doing that? I'm not sure which numbers.
I believe they're referring to their production that their solar is producing.
Yeah, that is my impression also.
If that is the question, you won't have to manually input your data if you signed up with solar through Solar States. We take care of your SRECs for you.
Oh, okay.
And it
Okay, I didn't know that. So that's
it auto monitors the production in your inverter.
okay. So wait. So you guys do you set that setup so that the customer already gets their checks, or do you guys? I mean, it could be that you that's in your contract. I don't know.
It's very rare that we will have SRECs for a customer. Pretty much one of the benefits of going solar through our company is we take care of all of your interconnection, your install, and we sign you up for SRECs. Once you're finished through your solar process, we send you a packet, a homeowner's manual that says, hey, this is your login information for your SREC account. This is your login information for your monitoring account. And this is how it should work.
Wait, so so regarding you do then set it up with the administrator and GATS?
Yep, and then
okay, I didn't know that, so that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I know every company
that
doesn't offer that, but we do.
Yeah, that's great.
The only thing they have to do is create their password.
Yeah, but great. That's really important for people to know that. So I mean, a lot of things I was saying, I was just assuming that the installers weren't doing that, or they wouldn't even if you didn't hear much about it. So that's great that you're doing that, and it would be nice if others did that too.
I agree with you, Ron.
Yeah, Ron, I just wanted to clarify that there also like other members from the public wouldn't get installed through Solar State. So it's still great that you touched on all of those topics.
But like Ron said, some people do have a manual production meter where you have to read it and enter the numbers. It is also possible they set it up through Enphase and Solar Edge so that the production gets automatically sent to the SREC.
Correct. That's right. It's correct. So you don't have to do anything. Just get those checks.
Yeah, you just have to know like how your system's set up, and but that's why many people don't have to enter the meter if it's set up to be automated.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think this was a great session. It was very engaging. We had a lot of great questions from the participants. I do not see any new questions in the chat, but I'm wondering, Laura, if there's anything that you'd like to answer live. Laura, you're on mute.
Classic. Thank you, Mavish. Yeah, there are a few questions here. I think, Ron, you've answered most, but there were a few more that I wanted to mention. And I'm seeing some interest in the chat in some follow-up time for KISS customers. So how about, what if we do it this way, that if you put your, let's see, maybe email solarize@philaenergy.org, so we make sure that we capture all your information if you want to be part of a follow-up conversation. And we can be happy to convene that. So Mavish can get something on the calendar. So I wanted to make sure we have that as a follow-up resource for those of you who have more questions who went solar with KISS. So that's one piece I wanted to mention. I think I saw another question come in. Ron, maybe you can answer this. If the revenue you generate from selling SRECs is considered taxable income?
That is a classic question. It's been back and forth forever. And I have to say, I think it's been finally concluded that it is not taxable income. Yeah, I think that's how it is. I mean, you keep hearing different sides rear its ugly head one way or the other, but I think it is not considered taxable income.
Okay, thanks, Ron. And there were several questions here about, I guess, making sure that their system is set up in GATS. So just so that everyone's on the same page, the first step is to register your system in GATS and then to contact an SREC aggregator?
No, the other way around. I mean, you could do it either way, but you really need to go through the aggregator first, because GATS is expecting to see a PA identification number, certification number. And if you don't obviously go to GATS first, you're not going to necessarily you won't have it. So my understanding clearly is that you should go through the aggregator first, or not through the aggregator. You could go directly to the AEP's administrator and manually do it that way. But that's where you have to start to get the PA certification, then go to GATS.
my understanding is that Solar States and KISS and all Solarize installers we've worked with set you up in GATS as part of getting your system, basically closed out. And typically I saw a few people in the chat saying that they received a manual with information about their system being registered. I don't know if that lines up, Ron.
It's very odd that it would happen that way unless when you're going through the GATS behind the scenes, they connect to the APS administrator, but you have to get a PA certification number first. So
Got it. And so if someone did go solar through KISS and they don't know their PA certification number, you're saying they could contact an SREC aggregator and they would help them get set up?
Yeah, any aggregator could help get set up, and of course they would hope that you would go with them to then aggregate. So you go through them as the aggregator, and you have a contract with them. You could possibly also try to find your system on GATS to see if you question it. If you know about the date that your system became live, you could scroll through. You could actually see by county. You could download or look at this information, and you could sort. You can't get any fine-tuned then county, but then you could see the size of the system, and your name might be in there or some kind of indicator that you might be able to actually find your line item of your system in there.
Got it. And so if you are setting up in GATS, so we have a customer asking, what's the next step to sell the SREC? It's to work with one of these aggregators. That's right. Yeah,
because again, unless you know how to sell it, I think SREC trade, there's a way to do it like on a bulletin board of some sort. But I mean, you must have time to spend doing things more valuable in life than to try to figure out how you get the best price. It's just not worth it.
And so Solar States, just for Solar States folks on the call, is there an aggregator you all use when you get people set up?
Yeah, we typically just do everything through SREC Trade because it's so easy and streamlines it.
Mm-hmm.
You can go through independent brokers to see who has the best rec or the best price for recs, but that's really tedious. And unless you are a day trader or just have a bunch of time on your hand, I don't think you would enjoy that.
Yeah. SREC Trade is definitely an avenue. You get a little bit more hands-on yourself with SREC Trade if you want to. We did that with.
Is someone able to put the links to SREC Trade, and then Ron, if you could put the link to the Penn AEPS site where people could look up their system in the chat, that would be good.
If I had to compare SREC Trade to something, I would say it's the Robin Hood of solar monitoring. It just makes it really easy. But I'm putting it in the chat now, and you may be able to check your system.
I know we're coming up on time, but I just wanted to share a few comments in closing. I think there was another question about Solar States monitoring options, so you can contact Solar States about their pricing options for that.
Yeah, I also have two more questions, Laura, before your closing remarks.
Okay, go ahead.
So this question is from Tom, and the question is, I use Solar Edge monitoring, but it doesn't have alerts. How do I enable them? Mark, Neve, or Mike?
I vote you, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not 100% sure, but if you contact us, I know we have ways we can set it up. One challenge we had is we're not always exactly sure what the client sees on their side of the portal, or but we could certainly help walk you through it, or if it needs us to.
I was trying to. Sorry, Michael. I was trying to include that as part of my presentation of how you can set up alerts, and I was messaging one of their customer support people, and they said that customers can't set up alerts, but installers can set up alerts for customers. It's kind of a weird Solar Edge thing. I think it's kind of dumb, but that's how it works. So if you want to set up alerts, contact us if you're, on Solar Edge. Even if you're not, a Solar States customer, I'm sure we'll do it for you.
Okay, and on a similar note, Neve, and there's another question that says, if my SolarEdge account was not created and the installer is no longer in business, can this customer contact Solar States, or is there something they can do to set up the account on their own? Or do they have to go through an installer in any case?
I'm not really sure. Can anyone else answer that?
Yeah, they can do it themselves, as I was saying. That you mean setting up and installing the SRECs? Yeah, they can, or they can contact anyone. I got, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm doing that for a commercial project right now. It was offline since 2010. It's been challenging because not all the documents are available, and I have been working through Pico to figure that stuff out. But
yeah. So this is for SolarEdge, not for SRECs. I'm sorry if I didn't.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I believe it has to be done by the installer.
Okay.
As far as I know, the installer sort of owns the system, so to speak, and then gives access to the homeowner.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. Laura, are there any other questions before we wrap up the webinar? I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah, I know. There was a question about the Pennsylvania APS site. You shouldn't have to register there, but there is a link. I'll put a link in the chat to the Pennsylvania APS site that Ron mentioned, where you can download the CSV and sort by county to see if you can see that your system's already set up in GATS. That's right, Ron, right? Okay, cool. Well, I think we've addressed the questions. I appreciate how much everyone's participating here, but feel free to contact us at solarize@philaenergy.org if you have any questions that didn't get addressed, and we're happy to work with you individually. Let us know if you want to be part of a follow-up conversation, and we can make sure to get in touch with you about that. And then I wanted to just share a few pieces. One is, a few folks were mentioning, and Mavish said in the chat as well, that they would be interested in potentially donating their SRECs. So we're actually putting together a program for that called Share the Sun. So since they are not very highly valued right now in Pennsylvania, it's, as you can tell, there's a bit of effort to put in here and not a ton of return, at least at this point, to selling your SRECs. So we are putting together a program that we're going to be rolling out this spring, where you can donate your SRECs to PEA, and we will use that revenue to support low-income households to go solar. And so that's part of our broader programs to make sure that everyone in Philly is benefiting from solar energy. And so I'll just quickly mention that we're about to publicly announce that we have had our first cohort of low and moderate income households go solar. Solar States is installing those now, and we have 50 households in that cohort. And we're really excited about that. Program is supported by Solarize Philly, and we'll be reopening it in 2021. So stay tuned for more details on that, but that's a really big milestone for Philadelphia, the first program of that kind in Philly. And I want to also mention that we run job training programs as part of Solarize Philly. So we run the Bright Solar Futures program in partnership with Solar States as well. They're the instructor for that program. And in Bright Solar Futures, we train young Philadelphians for jobs in solar. So we've had several students come out of that program and go into solar employment in the region. So really excited about that as well. And I'll just mention specifically that we launched a new program at Frankfurt High School this past fall. So it's actually the first solar vocational program in Pennsylvania that's been offered at a high school. So that kicked off, and we have a second cohort with PowerCore PHL underway now. So we have a lot going on. And one other piece I'll mention on the horizon, and then we can close out, is that we are planning to reopen Solarize Philly for a 5th phase this year. We're about to reissue an application for installers to participate. So we'll be reviewing installation contractors for this round, and then reopening it publicly later on this spring. So we'll be letting you know once that's happened so that you can spread the word to your neighbors about the program. But thanks everyone for joining, and let us know again if you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And we're leaving you with our email address and website information. If you have any other follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we would be more than happy to help you. Thanks again to our awesome speakers. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Neve. Thank you, everyone from Solar States. And once again, thanks to all our participants for all the questions and for making the conversation so engaging. So thank you, everyone, once again. And like I mentioned, feel free to send us a note if you have any other outstanding questions.